Mr Chair, I move that the question be now put.
Point of order. The Honourable Darren Hughes. This point of order does not relate to the usual point of order taken at this time to try and influence your decision at all, but it's just to seek some clarification around the new standing orders. If a member's contributed to the debate at any one point, used one of their 4 calls to debate the part, they are, under the new rules, they are entitled to move a closure motion. There's no question about that. This member has, of course, having been a member of the Select Committee, exercised that right. But this member has previously moved a closure motion before this one, and I'm just unclear as to whether or not that pushes him over his 4 calls of entitlement, or whether he is now able to move a second closure motion, his first one having not been accepted by you, having been participating in the debate.
I'm advised, Mr Hughes, that a closure motion is not a call per se, so it hasn't affected the member's calls. Sorry?
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
No, just...
Closure motion is a call and you can move the
That's
closure
what I
motion.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. Point of order, Trevor Mallard. No, I'll firstly take the... I'll give my ruling. I'll come back to you. I'll take Mr Mallard. The advice that's been given has been corrected. A closure motion is a call. No question about that. That accords with what I understood it. My advice is that a member can move a closure motion more than once, provided the member does not make more than 4 calls. They've got a limit of 4. I am just checking my notes here, and I think that Mr Bennett has not made 4 calls. But I'm just asking the clerk to double check. The clerk and my notes concur. This is Mr Bennett's second call on part 2. Mr Bennett has made calls previously, so he is both within... I'm not worried about what the whip's records say. They are immaterial, utterly. It's my notes which count, and there's no correspondence entered into. My notes say that there are 2 calls. Mr Bennett has moved a closure motion second, which he's entitled to do. The question is that the question...
Point of order, Mr Chairman.
Point of order, Trevor Mallard.
Mr Chairman, this is a separate point of order, and it goes to whether, in fact, a member is entitled to move the same motion twice. I can see that you're getting a nod, sir, but my understanding of the situation in the past is that other members are able to move the same motion, and this is not something restricted to a closure motion. It's something which is general about a member having moved a motion once, having had it rejected by the House, whether that member is allowed to move exactly the same motion. And I want to add one other point in here, sir, as to whether the motion was appropriately moved. Because, sir, as you are aware, one is not allowed to add words to the motion. And after that member had the call, he added the words, Mr Chair. He had the call, he'd called for it, he called Mr Chair, you gave him the call, and he said, Mr Chair. Well, thank you, Mr. I didn't quite get the thank you, but it was, and whether, he certainly said Mr Chair. I'm advised from behind it was thank you, I heard the Mr Chair, and my question, sir, is whether those are additional words which obviate his ability to move a motion in the proper form.
The member makes 3 points. Firstly, he claims that the motion moved by Mr Bennett was rejected by the House. This is not correct. The motion was not accepted by the Chair. That was not rejected by the House. That was the Chair's decision. Secondly, Mr Mallard raises about the nature of which the question was framed by putting in the words Mr Chair. Well, I think that's a matter of courtesy and respect, and I would not make a motion out for that. If the member thanked the chair for listening to his point of order, again, I think that is courtesy, and I would not discount a member for good manners. Good manners should be encouraged by everybody. Now, the question is that the question be now put. I'm going to put the motion because we've had 2 hours and 40 minutes on part 2, which is a rather technical point, and I think we've had a very good debate. The question is that the question be now put. Point of order.
Mr. Chairman, this is only to give notice of the fact that it will be my intention to recall the Speaker on that, but my colleague Mr Hughes has another point which he'd like to deal with, just in case we can deal with both of them with the Speaker at the same time.
Point of order, the Honourable Darren Hughes.
Point of order, Mr Chairman. I'm grateful to my colleague, Mr Mallard, for giving me the opportunity to put this point of order to you to save time, because we are still on the Committee of the Whole, and his matter is a separate one. Sir, my point of order to you goes to Speaker's ruling 7(1) around the setting and attendance of members in the chamber. And it particularly refers to an item brought before the House in 2003 by Mr Dunn, the member for Oharu, with respect to the positioning of members of Parliament when moving motions in the chamber. Now, sir, matters for seating in the chamber are at the discretion of the party leader and in most cases delegated to the party whip. But Mr Dunn raised a point of order during the debate on the Smoke-Free Environments Amendment Bill, which challenged the ability of members of Parliament to move a closure motion in a seat other than that had been allocated to them as an individual. Now, Mr Bennett is not normally allocated to a seat in the junior government whip seat, or indeed anywhere near the executive seats. There's not a seat in the chamber. And I don't say that to be unfair or unkind. I'm just making the observation that his seat is not seated over there.
Order. Sorry. Order will be heard in silence, please.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, I didn't mean to in any way cast aspersions on the member. I'm saying that for a closure motion to be moved, the member should be seated in their own allocated seat, as Mr Dunn pointed out in 2003, and I'd ask you, sir, to rule on whether or not it was appropriate to accept the closure motion from that particular member, given that he was in that seat. Mr Tremaine, I believe, had not exhausted all 4 of his calls and would be in a position to move a closure motion. The Honourable Mrs Collins is seated in her correct seat. She would be able to move a closure. The Tudor level is always extremely helpful to the National Party, and I'm sure he would be able to. Mr Garrett's an entirely different matter. But, sir, everyone else, I think, could have assisted you in that respect.
Could I just come to the point of the member's point of order? The member's contention is that a member of this House can only undertake functions of this House from their allocated seat. Now, if this was accepted as a legitimate point of order, I think it has implications well beyond this. And I'll come back to that in a moment. But firstly, I think it is the custom and the practice for members to move about the House and sit in other seats and conduct their business. When they give speeches, very often both Labor and National speak from seats which are not theirs. And the Chair always recognises them and accepted their speeches from there. And the member raising the senior Chief Opposition Whip well knows that from time to time the Whip seats in the opposition are vacated and neither of the Whips sit there, and other members cast ballots on behalf of their particular party. Now, if that member's point of order was to be accepted, it would mean that on no occasion could the Chair accept a party vote from the Labor opposition if it was anybody other than the Whip sitting there. Now, of course, this is a nonsense. No one would accept that. I think the custom is that people are able to move motions, speak from other seats, and I have no intention of disturbing that custom. So I am ruling that it's perfectly in order for Mr Bennett to move the closure motion from a seat other than his own. And Mr Mallard, I think you have given notice of a point of order. You're still reading on it? We're ready to go. Thank you.
Yes, Mr Chairman, and I do move that the debate do now adjourn in order to get a considered ruling from the Speaker.
Question is that the Speaker be recalled.
No, that the House do now adjourn in order to get a considered ruling from the Speaker.
I think there is a technical fault with your resolution there, Mr.
Oh, it was a good go, though, wasn't it?
The point is the committee can't adjourn. Now, if the member wishes to move that the Speaker be recalled, because of dispute over the chair's rulings, you're perfectly entitled to